everybody, and welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser. With me today is Tracie Harris.
Howdy.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Today is Sunday, December 4th, 2016. We're a live call-in internet TV show broadcasting from Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can catch us live every Sunday on YouTube or ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. You can provide feedback by commenting on the official show blog at freethoughtblogs.com/AXP, or you can email us at tv@atheist-community.org, or you can join the Atheist Experience official discussion group on Facebook. If you enjoyed this show, please check out our related podcast, The Nonprofits, currently airing on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. You can find links at the Atheist Experience website, and the next Nonprofits will be recorded this Wednesday, December 7th. As always, the cast and crew of the Atheist Experience will be going to dinner after the show at Star of India at 2900 West Anderson Lane. We're going to be arriving around 6:15 or so. We'll see you there. I have a few additional announcements to make. I just want to remind everybody that there is going to be no show on the Sunday, which is Christmas Day. And there's also going to be no show the following Sunday, which is New Year's Day. Some of us have lives and better things to do. Sorry, but you can get your entertainment the other 50 weeks.
Yeah, and the crew deserves a break.
Absolutely. Let's see. So I am, remote appearance alert. Next weekend, I'm going on business/fun to Las Vegas with my wife. And we're going to be around through Monday, and I've arranged to get together with the Secular Student Alliance locally at Jason's Deli there. So if you want more information about where and when we'll be, that's going to be next Monday, which is the 12th, and you can probably look up the Las Vegas Secular Student Alliance and maybe ask somebody who's there, or I will try to post a link on the blog and you can check that out. And I want to make another announcement on behalf of one of our members, Atheists Helping the Homeless, which we have a local chapter of. They also have two chapters in the state of Tennessee, and there's going to be some volunteers from both of them who are getting together on Saturday in Gatlinburg to do a giveaway there for folks who have apparently been affected by some big fires in the area. And they need some donations in the next 5 days, and they need some volunteers. And conveniently, at the bottom of your screen right now, there is a link to their Facebook group so that you can get more information from them. And for people who are listening on podcast, that is at, you can message them at facebook.com/AHH Chattanooga. That's 2 T's and 2 O's and one of everything else. And there was another address I saw a minute ago. There it is, facebook.com/AHHN 2016. So check them out. They're a good group. And that's all I have for now.
That's
What's
plenty.
up with you? Yeah.
That's not much. My life is always just sort of going along.
Oh, you surely you live a wild and crazy life, Tracie.
No, alas, it's just boring. But I like it boring, so it works for me.
Yep.
So I do have a little bit of a topic today. I posted to the blog, so part of the open thread for today's show that you can post to comment on includes the topic. It's not really anything new. I think it's just a few ideas that I finally sort of put together in my head that were all sort of disjointed thoughts that I've had or maybe even expressed. And then when I put them together, it was sort of like, oh, this is a different way to look at it that I hadn't actually looked at it before. I noticed on a mutual friends thread that she posts a lot about strange religious ideas and concepts on reproductive rights. And I noticed
They have those.
a very common problem that kept coming up was that those weird religious, like fundamentalist comments about sex and sexuality and reproduction and relationships, all people in the threads kept pointing out that it's almost like they don't understand consent. It's almost like they don't understand agency. It's almost, it's like they don't get this. And I was like, yeah, it's very, I've said before, it's a very dehumanizing religion at its core. And again, this is when you take it from a fundamentalist standpoint. I understand there are a lot of liberal Christians who don't really look at the theology in depth. And so they're sort of looking at it as just a do-good sort of social network, which this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people who get very, very deeply into the theology, who understand things about the idea of creationism, the idea that's behind, original sin, people that get really into the theology of it. They have this weird dehumanizing view of people as wicked and evil inherently, either born into sin or destined to sin. All of us need salvation from what? From hell, because we deserve death and destruction because of our natures.
Right.
So there's this very dehumanizing aspect to it that is not news to anybody that's watched the show. You've probably heard me describe that. But one thing I thought of was,
I mean, that is the marketing pitch, is basically you're a terrible person no matter how good you
think you are.
Your
no matter how good you are by human
Right.
standards, you have not lived up to God's.
There's an all-powerful standard and perfectly good, and if you get tortured forever, which is terrifying, it's because you deserve it.
Right.
And there's no way you can not deserve it, but you can still avoid it.
Right.
Join our religion.
Right. You can be redeemed, but it doesn't make you worthy. It makes you purchased back, right? I mean, that's what that means when you're redeemed. And so what I was thinking about was how the actual story of Eden, when you have Adam and Eve in Eden in Genesis, the actual villain in the story is agency. So what happens is you have this whole concept of God creating human beings with free will, but then any exercise of that free will is considered to be a breach of God's will. So if you exercise your will and it's antithesis to what God has decreed, then you are, in essence, committing sin, right? That's what that means, that it's not what God wants. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're harming anybody, right? So you don't go to temple on the Sabbath or whatever, and that's a sin. So these sinful things are not necessarily hurting other people, right? So it's not like, certainly they conflate some of the sinful things with wicked things like, murdering somebody or theft, but then they sort of sneak in these unharmful things and say, well, that's also a sin, like eating shellfish or, having sex and you're not married, or like these are horrible, horrible sins aligned, just as bad as murdering someone. There's no differentiation. If you've done one, you're just guilty and ready to die. So I was looking at that and I thought, isn't it weird that it was the exercise of agency, right? That Adam and Eve actually did something out of their own agency. That was what condemned them to be removed from the tree of life, so that eternal life was then snatched from their grasps, and that they were now in danger of hellfire. According, again, to theology, I understand the doctrine of hellfire is not really cut and dry in the Bible, but the idea behind the theology is that there is this punishment of some sorts. So you get this punishment for your for exercising your agency. And what's interesting to me is the actual quote, that idea of the God-given gift of agency is what made human beings, right? And so when you look at the mythology, when you look at the myth, what it's saying is it's an explanation of human agency and humanness. right? And it's saying you're not a chair. You are this thing with will. You have this will that you exercise.
Right.
And that's what differentiates you from objects, right? And so when you objectify a person, when you're guilty of objectification of a person, what you've done is you've disregarded their agency.
And they even go out of their way to make sure that the separation from animals is clear. Like, God made all the animals, and then he slept a day, and then he made people because the animals weren't good enough.
Yeah.
And so people are a completely separate category as much as animal from
But
plant.
like you say, in the mythology, it's clearly a myth around, this is when we talked about how you have the just so stories. This is the just so story of how man got his free will.
Yes.
And then in getting the free will, it was a crime to exercise it. Right? That is so amazing to me, because what the religion is actually saying then is that objectifying people is the ideal. And that treating people as human, or acting like a human, or in some way respecting other people as human and respecting agency and respecting free will is actually a sin. And that when unless you're willing to subjugate your will and deny yourself that thing that makes you human and objectify your own self, you then are guilty of so many things, right? And we hear these lines that are thrown at people who say, but I want to do this and it doesn't hurt anybody, and so I'm going to do it. And you will get the retorts that, oh, you worship yourself then, right? You just want to go and sin and not be responsible for it. It's like, no, I'm just exercising my free will, not harming anybody. And so I don't understand, why should it be wrong? But it's wrong just to inherently be human. Like, that's what this boils down to. It is from start to finish a complete objectification of humanity and an absolute dehumanizing, like, stripping of what makes you non-object.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're blamed for the things that you do. I mean, which would be reasonable if they were things that actually cause harm. But when we're talking about the general concept of sin, like the actual consequences or effects of the action aren't taken into account, because that's sort of a moral philosophy called consequentialism. But the notion of sin is anything God says is bad, which, being people who don't accept the notion of God in the first place, people will ask us, like, so there's no such thing as sin? And the answer is not by the way you apparently define it, because there would have to be a God.
Right.
Now, people ask us, is there any such thing as right and wrong? The answer is still yes, but it's by a different and, we think, more reasonable standard than that.
Right, and that's the whole idea of whether or not there would be sin. Even if there was a God, you'd get into the Euthyphro dilemma, right? Where just because God is saying it's wrong, if you see nothing wrong with it, and if no one can see anything wrong with it, then sin would be separate from wrong.
Right.
Sin would be separate from harm. And so then what would sin matter?
Exactly.
Right. Other than it's something that pisses off God, right? Like, that would be what sin would amount to, is not anything wrong, not anything harmful, just arbitrary random things that piss off God, some of which may be harmful, some of which may not be. And it's just a very bizarre, useless sort of concept.
Right. Well, like a lot of arguments for religion, it's all about sort of redefining terms in ways that are favorable toward the religion.
One thing that was interesting, and this, I don't mean this, please don't misunderstand, because I'm sure that people understand, my own position on the abortion issue, but whether you are pro-choice or anti-choice is irrelevant to the point I'm about to make, which is that there are some arguments that objectify the women in these debates, and that was one of the things that kept coming up. It is so common for people that objectify human beings or objectify women as well, or especially, for them to use analogies that cast the woman in the role of property or some form of object, right? Like, it's like if I had a dog, like if I had a chair that you borrowed, or if I had this piece of land that and it's like,
or if you left your door unlocked.
And it's basically saying, if we pit the unborn against something that has no rights and no agency, then why wouldn't the unborn, win this battle of rights? And it's like, well, I think it would if women were chairs, but they're not, so that doesn't go anywhere. The moment I see somebody cast, a human being in the role of an object, it shows me immediately their lack of respect for humanity, their lack of respect for agency, their lack of respect for what makes a human human, right? It's not, what differentiates me from this table is my agency.
Right.
That's why you can take an axe to the table, but you can't take an axe to me. There's a problem with enforcing and coercing things that have their own will. It's an especially egregious thing to do. Whereas if you're enforcing your will on a table, it's not really considered a problem, as long as it's not someone else's table, I suppose. But yeah, anyway, that was kind of the point of it. I guess I just had never really thought about the role of agency in the Eden story before. And it kind of made me realize a little bit as to why I kept seeing these weird dehumanizing and odd anti-agency objectifying comments. And it's interesting, too, because they will claim over and over again that it is like non-religious society that objectifies women. And it's like, no, I don't think you understand what objectification means.
Right.
And that was one thing that they kept talking about that was very, very weird, was they would take a certain action and say, they would say something, for example, like, oh, what if somebody likes to be I don't know, slapped during sex, right? And they would say, oh, this is horrible, this is degrading, it's objectifying. And it's like, well, if somebody consents to that freely and that's what they want, that makes all the difference in the world. It's, if you're talking about an assault, that means to attack somebody that's not really consenting to it, somebody that you are attacking that has not said, hey, this is what I want, right? Whereas it's almost like when they use these arguments, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, do they not understand then that when you consent to sex, that's not rape, and when you don't consent to sex, that would be rape? And a lot of times in their commentary, it doesn't become clear that they understand that.
Yeah.
The concept of consent to them and the concept of agency and how that plays into when it is and isn't okay to do something to somebody. Really, they are confused by that heavily because they don't understand how agency changes the scenario.
As people make it out to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would like to say it's only theists who have this problem, but
well,
obviously...
I don't think that it's necessarily just theists that have the problem, but I think it is a history of this type of theism that has created this problem in society.
Because the religion also codifies this behavior.
Right. It doesn't just reflect
this is what God wants.
Right. It doesn't just reflect the social norms. It also helps to dictate them and to maintain them. That's been a role of religion in most societies since there's been religion, is to sort of maintain this sort of status quo, to be the mythology that encompasses what the society values and what it, how it behaves. And then the religion takes on this sort of mutual role where it, in addition to reflecting what the society values and what the society, the morals and mores are, it also dictates to them. But it's an interesting thought. I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
That is
It got some hits at the blog. And
check out the freethoughtblogs.com/AXP
now that I don't have to read.
if you want to weigh in on this topic. And I have a little mini rant of my own, but I do want to get to callers as soon as possible. So maybe I'll just make this sort of a teaser for Wednesday's Nonprofits for the people who don't regularly listen. If you're interested in this, you might consider tuning in on Wednesday, because I might discuss this at more length with Jeff and Dennis. So as an organization and as a show, we talk mainly about atheism, but one thing we try to promote also is general skepticism. I go around doing talks for student groups sometimes where skepticism is my favorite topic that isn't even necessarily all about atheism. And a lot of atheists think of themselves as pro-science and basically favor the scientific explanation of the world over faith-based explanations of the world. And science has this whole methodology, which I think is very important, where you don't take the word of any one particular person, but But publication is considered very important in science, and people are allowed to critique other people's work and try to reproduce what their findings are. But then there are organizations that recognize that science has respect in the modern world, and so they try to surround themselves with the trappings of science and say, well, we're a scientific group and we're doing real science, and anyway, so-called real scientists are biased anyway, and they're not objective. And so you get like creationists saying, oh, we all have the same facts, but we interpret it differently. And then they set up sort of shadow networks of fake science.
Their own little journals and things.
Right,
even.
yeah. And a lot of people claim to be skeptics when actually they are just people who don't understand how science works and willfully ignore a lot of evidence. And this is all an elaborate analogy, because what I really want to talk about right now, or briefly mention the topic, is fake news. And I've said this several times before, but so The Onion is a comedy site, and I love The Onion. I think The Onion is awesome. They have a lot of great comedy writers, and they tell good jokes, and for the most part, their news stories can't be confused by any reasonable person with a real news story. But The Onion has been running for, I don't know, at least 20 years, and a lot of imitators have popped up, and many of them try to be funny but aren't good at it.
But satire is protected free speech.
Satire is protected free speech, but shitty comedy isn't something I appreciate.
Something though, when I see something like the ABC CO,
right. I don't even know what that is.
Oh, ABC. If you see that CO, it's not ABC. So there are people that initially started sharing the ABC CO URL because they thought it was ABC News.
Yeah, and there are different degrees of this. I mean, I'm mildly annoyed by sites that are trying to be The Onion, but their jokes aren't funny, and so a lot of the time they just come off writing stories that are plausibly true but happen not to be true.
Yeah.
And that's another thing.
Bad satire.
But then the interesting thing is that more and more sites have found out that they can make money by straight up faking the news, by writing actual lies, and they may not necessarily even have malicious intent about it. They just found it's profitable because they can make a fake news site. They can print things that people want to read and share. Yeah. They can get real advertisers to come together and write, and pay them money for eyeballs, because the eyeballs are just as real whether the news happened or not. And then, and maybe this is a big part of the problem, you get popular media sites like Google, which is a search engine that has a news section, and Facebook, which more and more is just getting tons of mind share, and people are just reading their news in part of their friends' feeds. And people are seeing these articles, and they're becoming more difficult to distinguish from real news. And one reaction to this that I've seen, and I actually had a short Twitter conversation this week, is, oh, well, all news stories are fake. I mean, the media, they're all biased and trying to get your money. I feel like that is the wrong approach to take, because, yeah, everybody is subject to human fallacies and error, but there are some news sources that at least try to hold themselves to some realistic journalism standards. Yeah. And there are some that actually deliberately make shit up. And it's complicated.
Yeah.
So maybe more on that Wednesday.
Okay. I think it's fair. No, it's basically defamation.
Yeah. Let's see. So we're going to start with Luke in St. Louis. Hello, are you there?
Hello.
Hey, Luke. Thanks for holding.
How are you?
Hello, Russell. Hey, Tracie.
Hey.
Hi.
How's it going today?
Okay, what's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to share a story with you and see what you think. I guess for an intro, I'm a pastor's son, so I've always been in the Church of God, and something happened to me about 8 years ago, and I really have no explanation for it, but what the situation was, I was living in a small 2-bedroom house in North St. Louis, and this was the summer of 2008, I believe. It was June or July, and I remember it was 7 a.m. in the morning, and I never get up early, so I was asleep. And the next thing I remember was just this huge pounding on the door, like bang, like somebody was kicking this door as hard as they could. Mm-hmm. And so I wake up and I'm just thinking, what's going on? At first I thought it was my dad because he lived there in the next room, but then I remembered my dad wasn't there. And so now I'm really starting to freak out because I have no idea who's on the other side of this door. And I get up, I don't even grab my glasses, I get to the door, and when I turn the knob, it opens. There was no lock on the door, and lucky for me, it was just a teenage kid robbing the house, and he ran off. Okay. And my immediate thought wasn't, hey, there must have been an angel holding this door shut. But then, after I got to thinking about it, he got in my dad's room and stole some stuff. My dad had the same kind of door with the same knob on it, and he went right in there. So whenever he got to my room, he could not get in there no matter what. He was kicking that so hard that it should have busted the door down, but I just never could explain how that managed to happen.
So
well, wait. Let him finish.
Okay.
Where this goes.
I thought we were wrapping up that one.
Well, no. I mean,
is there more?
I want to know. Like the kid was, I guess, caught and they questioned him. The person who robbed the house, was he questioned?
We called the police.
Okay.
And the police brought over some photos of different people in the neighborhood that matched the description. And I remember he was wearing a baseball cap, and he had short hair. So they showed me about 6 people they thought it might be in the area. And I chose the one that looked the most like him, but since I didn't have my glasses on, I didn't get a perfect look at him.
Sure, I understand.
Okay.
And they had some dogs sniff around, and I don't know. They had a suspect, but then a guy said that he had an alibi for that time. And
okay.
I don't know if they ever caught him, but if he would have gotten in my room while I was asleep, he could have killed me.
So you're saying that the suspect was, there was never anybody prosecuted for this crime?
No.
There was never anybody identified. So we don't really know why he was kicking your door.
Well, we know that he stole some stuff out of my dad's room.
Yes, we do know that, but you don't know why something hit your door. You're assuming that somebody was kicking your door as an attempt to get in, that they couldn't open the door, but we don't really have a statement from the person as to verify that that's what hit your door or why, correct?
Oh, well, it sounded like he was kicking it. So
okay, so you've got somebody kicking a door, but we don't know why.
Right.
Okay.
That seems like a pretty dumb behavior for somebody who's robbing the house.
He could be vandalizing it as well. I don't know. I
mean,
it's like, I have no idea. This is a teenager.
But he didn't get caught, so I guess
what I'm saying is you heard something outside of your door that you assume was someone kicking the door, and you assume it was someone trying to get in, but we really don't have the person to ask if that's really what was going on with your door.
I don't think that's an unreasonable assumption.
I didn't say it was an unreasonable assumption.
I want to get back to the part where you seem to imply that you thought an angel held your door closed.
Well, I understand why he thinks
Oh,
that.
well,
If someone's trying to get in and the door has no lock and the door opens
Well,
easily
yeah,
and it's
but
the
I
same
mean, the
door.
angel didn't stop the house from getting robbed, and he didn't stop the dad
So-
from.
okay, so he's
I
saying-
mean, what was this angel? What was
I
his
see where
game
you're going.
plan? Is what I'm wondering. If he was going to
Well,
hold
the
the door
reason I
closed, wouldn't he hold the door to your house closed in the first place so you don't get robbed?
Oh, no, that's not what happened. The robber came into the basement and busted the window to get in there.
Well, maybe the angel could have reinforced the window somehow.
We did do that afterwards. We put bars on the windows.
Well, no, but do you understand what Russell is asking
I mean,
you?
this isn't very good help.
It's not good angelin.
Yeah.
It's like kind of lazy angelin. It's the angel basically fell down when it came to letting somebody rob your house.
I mean, I'm joking around a little because I don't
Well-
see anything about your story to make me even start to guess that there was an angel involved.
And of course,
That
the other
doesn't-
question
that
is,
not an
if the door
explanation.
didn't open, we would have no idea if it was an angel holding it shut or why.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I can't even get to a point where I know what the sound was that you heard outside the door.
right. And I mean, maybe the door was just stuck, or maybe the teenager was dumb and thought the door was stuck. I don't know.
Well, I didn't think
Angels
that he
would be really,
would
really
skip turning
low
the
on the
handle,
list
but-
of
Well,
explanations.
sometimes
I'd
in
go with.
robberies, there's a lot of mayhem. People don't
Yeah.
always go in and just nicely open your drawers and so there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown around during a robbery. And I'm just saying
If-
things hitting a door might
If
not
anything,
necessarily be kicks.
I'd say that, I mean, if there were angels involved, I'd say they were certainly helpful to the kid in getting away, because it doesn't sound like they were a very competent robber.
And when you first wake up, that's the other thing. Anytime somebody says, I was awakened, you're not really thinking clearly. You're still fuzzy-headed when you wake up. And this banging could have been all kinds of things. It might not have even been against. I mean, was there damage to your door? Was there evidence
No,
of a
I
kick
didn't
to the
see
door?
that- I didn't see that there was damage to the door, but the door worked perfectly fine.
Right, but I mean, could the
time I
noise
opened
have
it,
been
and-
something else and not been kicking against your door? Could it have been something that sounded like your door being kicked and your door wasn't being kicked? I mean, my interior doors where I used to live and the interior doors where I live now, if you kicked at them, you would at least get a hole in it, even if the door didn't open. Because I've accidentally put holes in my doors before for the interior doors. I don't know, you might have had pretty heavy interior doors, but it would seem like you'd have a boot print or something on the door if someone was kicking it, even if it didn't open.
Right. I didn't really. My main concern wasn't the damage to the door right then, so I didn't. I tried it and it worked after
Yeah.
he was there, and it worked before he was there. It never had any problems getting stuck before that. So, based on all the other people that knocked on the door, this sounded exactly like that, except for much louder. So.
Well, I
mean,
mean,
it
but
could have
I've
been-
heard things before that sounded like something, and then I find out it's something else. Have you ever had that experience? Where you hear
Yeah,
a
I mean,
thing and you think, oh, that's this or that, and then you go and you look and you're like, oh, no, it's this other thing, but it sounds just like that.
That is true. I heard somebody raking leaves outside my window before, and
Yeah.
I thought it sounded like somebody, coasting along in the house with
I
their
think, yeah,
socks
when
on the
when
floor.
wind goes through a ginkgo tree, I think it sounds like water to me, like running water.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
This sound was pretty unmistakable, so
yeah,
that
you
was just
weren't
one instance
awake.
where,
I mean, you had just come out of a sleep, though. I mean, it's not like you were at your heightened sensibilities here.
And I mean, even if the story happened exactly the way you told it, and the kid was knocking really loudly on the door, or kicking the door really loudly for whatever reason, again, angels is super low on the list of possible explanations that I would consider in asking why he didn't get in. Like, there is absolutely nothing in your story.
He could have
that
had his
makes me
arms
think
full and been trying to
angels-
kick a door in and just, not been able to grab the knob and then just ran out with it. I mean, I don't
maybe
know.
he's like, I've seen all these movies where cops kick in doors. It looks cool. I'm going to try it.
The problem
and
is,
it didn't work.
The problem is I have no idea what was actually going on the other side of that door.
Yeah.
oh, well, I didn't hear anything whenever he got into my dad's store, so that's why I assumed he was able to open that silently.
Probably
and
was.
then
And
he
wised
couldn't
up and
get into
dropped his
mine.
stuff.
But he didn't have anything in his hands when I opened the door. He was just standing there.
Okay, so you saw, okay, yeah, you did say you got to look at the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Anyway,
He didn't steal any of my stuff, so the angel stopped him from doing that, at least.
okay, but the
It
angel
worked.
let him rob your dad because he didn't care about your dad, who's a preacher, huh?
Yeah,
Like Tracie said,
Well.
bad angeling.
it wasn't a total loss.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing. I think
All
we're
right.
going to go to the next
Thanks for
caller.
having me
I'm
on.
going to
Talk to
say
you
when
later.
you're omnipotent, you should be able to do better than not a total loss.
Yeah. I,
It should be just raging victory every time.
right. Well, I don't know. People believe what they want to believe. Al in Scotland.
Hello, Russell. How you doing?
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. It's just I had to switch calls there onto my mobile because my cordless phone died the battery.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason I'm calling, I was explaining to your producer, I want to play devil's advocate, if you don't mind, for a couple of minutes on some of the points that you put across, just to give me my history concerning your show.
I don't know.
I've only discovered
I
that-
don't know if we need your personal history about the show if it's going to take a few minutes. I'd rather you
that's
get to
fine
your
then.
question soon.
Well, basically, I want to play devil's advocate because I've noticed over a couple of your videos that I've seen over the last week, dating from 2006 to date, where you use some analogies that I've had big problems with. For instance, there was one I seen, I think it was from 2008, where you were discussing with one of your callers the relevance between the Bible being a book and, for instance, you use a lot of the time Harry Potter.
Sure. Sounds like me.
Yeah, don't you think, but Harry Potter does not mention in any way that it's a form of religion, that you should take up the teachings of Harry Potter and put them into your own personal life? Do you not think a better analogy would be, for instance, picking up a copy of the Quran or the Torah and putting them in the same rather than just picking pointless books of fiction?
I mean, it can be a better analogy. I use different analogies at different times, and I certainly have compared the Bible to the Quran, but I don't think you can completely discount the connection between one, what I consider completely fictional book and another one.
I have a point to make
Yeah.
about this.
Okay.
I've heard the same thing about when it comes to comparing gods to things like fairies or gremlins, and people saying, why don't you compare them to other gods? And the reason that I will use something that is, broadly disbelieved is because I'm trying to get the person on the other side of the conversation to view the thing to see what it's like for me. So when I use another god, they still have this idea of people believing in this false god. But when I use fairies,
and
that's something.
they're likely to say, "Oh yeah, Muslims believe in the same God, but they just interpret him."
So when you give them
blah, blah,
something
blah.
that they just absolutely do not believe in, now they're sitting in my chair, and now
Yeah.
they're understanding how I'm viewing their God, and this is why it offends them many times. But it's also the only way I know to get them to understand that I don't view your God as like even potentially.
Slightly plausible.
Yeah, and I don't see it as being a distortion of something real, or I just see it as this made up mythological thing that And if I want them to understand that, I have to choose something that they will clearly see as fabricated.
Yeah, well, good point. My second point on the same vein is I've heard you as well, specifically when you mentioned there about the fairy tales. I've heard you mention the flood event is a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but over the last 10 years, there's been some amazing papers published regarding I'm trying to think. I can't remember specifically who wrote it, but there was a paper published, I think it was in 2014, regarding there was an asteroid impact in northern Canada just before the Ice Age. And basically, what the geologists and the astrophysicists are now kind of trying to get around to the fact saying, well, because of this event, it caused a massive glacial ice melt that affected glacial valleys and river flood valleys all the way down through into
the Bible says
Rocky Mountains.
the Bible says that the global flood raised the water level so high that all the highest mountains on Earth were completely covered all the way up to the top. That didn't happen.
No, I understand the dogma regarding that, but I'm talking about from like a historical point of view, especially when you look at the I'm trying to think the right word here. When you look at the ancient stories involved in, like, say, the North American Indians, the Mayans, where they mention in their myths about their global flood events. Also, you can trace it all the way to the African East.
Look,
the African East.
China had a thriving civilization very far removed from that part of the world while the global flood was supposedly going on and everybody on Earth died except 8 people. That didn't happen. There wasn't an interruption in Chinese history.
The other thing to note is Joseph Campbell...
No, guys, you may take this the wrong way. I should state out, I don't class myself as a theist. I also don't class myself as an atheist. I class myself as an enlightenist.
I don't care what you classify yourself as. You're trying to support the notion that there was a global flood that wasn't a myth. So you're wrong.
No, you misunderstood. I'm talking about there was a flood event that affected the peoples of the time.
Okay.
Now, over the course of history, as you know, it's like a game of Chinese whispers. You can take an actual event, pass it through word of mouth. At the time, because there was no really written or like categorised account of the event.
But you know, myths can still be based on real events. That doesn't mean they're not myths.
But there's a much easier explanation for this. Joseph Campbell has talked about flood mythology, and he said that if you look it up, it's generally peoples who live near waterways that have flood mythologies. It's not rocket science. If you live near water, especially water that is prone to flood, you'll have a flood myth.
But the point I'm trying to say is this impact. I mean, are you aware of the geological area known in Northern Europe between the east coast of Britain and the west coast of Europe, Doggerland?
No.
So what?
There was an area called Doggerland.
Oh.
It's basically now under the North Sea.
Okay. And?
Right. Now, again, the scientific papers state that there was a global flood. Sorry, no, I said that wrong. I shouldn't have said that. There was a major flood event that basically...
A major local flood event.
Sorry?
A major local flood event. I mean, those happen.
Yeah, but at the time, the North Sea is still an open part of the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
If you look at the geological content I'm talking about, this area was basically flooded. Now, geologists, again, and paleontologists have been dragging up pots, mastodon bones, Neanderthal artefacts, and they basically say this area was flooded in a matter of days. Now, if you take into consideration some of these geological impacts that have happened, that are now just coming to light, don't you think it's about time that atheists in general sat down and just went, okay, we need to start seriously looking at this and tying it up? Because I believe it would actually help the theists in understanding the peoples. Again, I honestly believe that...
I don't have a problem with that. No, I don't disagree that there are elements of real culture that can be mined out of the Bible. I don't necessarily think that the Bible is a better source of information than other things that were written at the same time.
It's like your Spider-Man in New York.
Yeah.
New York is real.
Well, he's not going to like that because he doesn't like
what
analogies.
I'm saying is you have used the analogy where there's real things.
Right.
That you can have real things mixed in with elements of, surreal.
Exactly, that's the point I'm trying to get across.
Okay, but you're not saying anything I don't agree with. I'm just trying to say that people who take the entire Bible as information about events that really happen are wrong, because there's stuff in the Bible that didn't happen and could not have happened. And so the Bible is not an authoritative source on information of what happened back then. It may happen to contain true information here and there.
And we also don't have a way to demonstrate that they were talking about some, I guess, asteroid that hit and melted the ice. I mean, their history only, declares to go back about 6 to 10,000 years is when they're dating it. So unless this thing happened like 10,000 years prior, it probably wasn't them referring to some really, really ancient event.
Well, again, right, I don't know, do you know the work of Dr. Graham Hancock?
No.
Right. I recommend you check out his stuff. Basically, to give you a context to him.
But, I mean, what's the point? What is your point? What are you trying to tell us that we don't already
go back
believe?
And look at the historical record and try and tie up biblical and even other religious events to actually things that happened that affected the people of the time that were so traumatic, where it indentured their brain with these, like, I'm trying to look for the word here, it indentured their brain with these, like, basically, like, scary tactics for them to rationalise, to bring God into the picture so they could explain what was happening. So, when you, for instance, again, Dr. Graham Hancock, now when you look at the pyramids, the Bible tells us Joseph, the Joseph effect with him and how the pharaohs built the pyramids. But when you actually send technical people to look at, and they've done it for the last 300 years. For instance, did you know that Sir Isaac Newton sent quite a few of his students over a period or something, I think it was over 15 years, to go and study mathematics.
I'm still trying to figure out what your point is,
I'm trying to figure out why we should care. Like, let's say that the biblical flood...
I'm interested in what the peoples that came before us were actually doing at the time.
But they weren't. I mean, what the story tells, the biblical flood story is not telling the event of an asteroid that melted the ice caps or whatever.
Now, I'm trying to get across here. The point I'm trying to get is physical events can affect people's minds.
I know that.
A lot of stories are the result.
To cover it, and so they invent theistic excuses or explanations.
Yes, they do. Animism is inventing supernatural explanations for all kinds of natural things.
But the way the stories are told in the Bible, it's still appropriate to call them myths.
Right. I mean, they had Zeus throwing thunderbolts.
From the theist point of view, yes, but when you look at the physical evidence that's now coming forward, for instance, look at all the sunken cities that's now appearing all over the world. You have one showing up in India.
And are you saying that people could have used the Bible to predict those things, or what? Like what?
No. Again, you're not getting the point that I'm trying to say.
Well, you're not making a point.
Evidence has now moved that forward. We were actually beginning to discover mythical. For instance, look at Troy. Up until Troy was discovered, ask any paleontologist historian. Troy was a myth. Troy was a myth. Troy was a myth. Then, when it was found. I can't remember the German.
Sure, once you have evidence to support something, then it's time to believe it. Okay, I understand that.
Yeah,
we agree.
So if you look now at the stuff, I mean, you have stuff like the Yonaguni Monument in Japan. You have the structures that are now...
Wait, we have Zeus. Wait, we've got Zeus throwing thunderbolts. I believe in thunderbolts, right? I've seen them. So I've seen lightning, I've seen thunder. I know that Zeus is a myth to explain lightning and thunder. So now we agree. So what is the point? What am I supposed to take away from Zeus as the myth behind lightning and thunder?
Well, again, you're changing the subject. That's not what I'm talking about.
We're talking about real events affecting mythologies.
No, I'm talking about real events affecting the people who then who can't understand it at the time through limited scientific...
Okay,
that's Zeus throwing a thunderbolt.
So what?
So what? So you're dismissing all these archaeological things. For instance, go get.
No. I'm not smashing anything. I'm just trying to decide what you're objecting to about what we say.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to figure out what you objected to about what we say.
Geological stuff geological evidence that's now coming forward. Right? It doesn't support the Bible, but it gives a reason for the people of the Bible to act the way they did. Because at the time they didn't know.
Thank you for the updates. All right, I'm moving on.
Thank you. Because I still don't know what just happened.
Yeah. I've wasted my life.
I want to apologize to the other viewers.
Sorry,
I'm so
guys.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know what that was.
We have one more theist on the line right now, but I'm gonna take the person who's been on hold the longest instead.
All right, we'll skip back.
just to lower my blood pressure.
You're hoping. Maybe.
Colin.
Come on, Colin.
Colin in California.
It's all on you.
Hey, Russell. Hey, Tracie. I just want to thank you guys for having me on the show.
Yeah, please be reasonable.
Good. So I have I have two questions for you guys. One of which is probably not on your screen, so I'm going to ask the second one, which would be, first off, are you guys meat eaters? Do you guys eat meat?
Yep, and here we go.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't mean to be this type of person. I'm just curious as to why you haven't maybe gone vegan or considered it.
I guess you have? You're asking me why I haven't done something.
Yeah.
That's an odd question.
Well, I mean, earlier in the show you were talking about consent, and I view that animals haven't really.
I do not put all animals in the same category of sentience and having rights as my fellow human beings. Although I understand that reasonable people disagree about this, but from my personal philosophy, I wouldn't eat a person, and I probably wouldn't eat something cute, although that may be my personal prejudice. But I don't have a problem eating cows and chickens.
And I feel like I'm a member of a social species, and like all social species, I draw distinctions between my own species and other species, just like any other animal. I don't view myself as above other animals. I view myself as an animal.
Well, I mean, as above another animal, I mean, I feel like...
No, I don't view myself that way.
I don't know, like that... Oh, I see. Well, I don't know, I just view that these animals haven't really given us consent.
Right, and a rabbit doesn't give
torture
consent to
them
be eaten by a coyote, and yet that's social species they treat each other. Coyotes don't treat each other like they do prey animals. That's like a normal social species distinction.
Right. For me, it comes down a lot to level of sentience. I mean, if I were to run into an alien species that had thoughts and philosophies and the ability to communicate with me, I would probably not kill them for meat.
Yeah, the idea would be, though, that you are able to integrate with them in a social way that is constructive, that I can actually interplay with you in a way that creates a society that is beneficial to everybody's survival. When other species are not lending that, they become, to anybody that is concerned about their own survival, somehow less important than their own species, or at least, like I said, if it depends on how you prioritize your own survival.
Right. And I hate to say this, but we've had this conversation before, and it tends to be really tangential to atheism. And I think this may be an agree to disagree situation where you might want to consider switching to another point, because we're not going to let this take up the entire rest of the show.
I completely understand.
Although we are going to get a bunch of email about it.
Sure. So agree to disagree. My second question is more just curiosity. I've heard Matt talk about in the past the ability to not really know something with an absolute certainty. Can you guys just go into a little more detail, because I'm a little confused about that?
I think that ties back to something called solipsism. There's an I do. I think that it starts from the point that you know, I think therefore I am, right? So you know that you are because you experience yourself, everything that you experience. But beyond that, there really isn't a way to know with a certainty that what you're experiencing is what you believe you experience. Yeah,
but I think more specifically, I think we always talk a lot about how, even in the best case scenario, all science is tentative, and we have sort of a limited understanding of the world, and we may agree on things with more or less amounts of confidence. But it's always possible that the right evidence could come along and completely change basic things that we think.
The fact that I think, the reason that I would say, like, it's a fact that this table is in front of me, well, that could be not a fact. I mean, it's a fact for all I know, right? For all I know. And that's what we're all kind of saying. When we say that we know something, when we say that something's a fact, what we're saying is, for all I know, this appears to me to be reality. That's
Right.
what it means to you.
So, like, just to clarify, you're saying that, like, maybe we're just living in a matrix and that table doesn't.
Well, I'm not
I
saying
don't
that
say I
maybe we
believe
are.
it, but I'm
just saying I
that
haven't ruled it
you know,
out.
if something came along and showed me that I would have to acknowledge it, right? I mean, I'm just saying that I know what I know, but it's contingent on the things that I believe to be true.
Right. I watch The Matrix and I'm like, haha, that's a super cool movie, and I love the kung fu and stuff. Obviously, it has a ton of plot holes, and humans wouldn't work as batteries and so on.
The question to ask yourself. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I don't take The Matrix seriously as philosophy. But if tomorrow Morpheus wakes up and says, guess what? You know that movie, The Matrix? That's how it really is. I'm going to have to readjust my thinking. I mean, I don't think we're living in The Matrix, but that conclusion, to some extent, is tentative.
But your brain states are what you're going to experience, right? I mean, it's possible to alter people's memories. It's possible to actually implant memories into people. And if there are people that experience a reality that the rest of us do not, people that experience like psychosis, or people that experience schizophrenic episodes where they're hearing voices or seeing things and have difficulty differentiating between what's real and what we would consider a consensus reality versus what they experience. And so the idea of what's going on, what you experience is all just process in your brain. I mean, that's really what it amounts to. And there's all kinds of, like you were talking about other species. There are other species that actually visually see things in a different way, or species that echolocate, or they're experiencing like very different realities. Now, those things should converge on what would be a consensus reality. They don't violate my reality. The fact that a bat can echolocate doesn't negate what I experience, but it does experience something I don't. But at the same time, a person who's deaf isn't going to experience sound, and this is because of the way your body is interacting and bringing in information to your brain. But the question becomes how, basically you're trusting your brain to be interpreting what's real and giving you feedback that you can rely on. The most you can really say about it is that you do experience, or at least you think you do, I guess, because who knows? There's that question of what if all of your memories were just put into you 5 seconds ago? Mm-hmm. So I can't even say that you experience a consistent reality. It seems that I do, right? I believe that I'm talking to you on the phone right now, but do I know that? All of this could be undermined by just the thought that that anything or everything that I'm experiencing isn't really reality. Now, the problem is you have to work from something, right? You have to go start from somewhere. And so you start from what you do experience, because what choice do you have? I can't start from what I don't experience. I can't start from what I don't know. So you have to start from what you're presented with and what manifests to you. So I completely not defer, but subjugate, I guess, to that. I say I understand that this is a necessary step in proceeding with any sort of reasonable existence, because I have no options here. Does that make any sense?
Hello? No, we lost him.
You're kidding.
How do you know we were really talking to him on the phone?
How do you know we lost him? He might still be there. I don't know.
No, but the line is not lit up anymore.
No.
So,
You trust your
all
mind.
right. Forrest in Seattle.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm here to lower your blood pressure. I promise I'm not going to push any idea on y'all.
I'm
Sorry,
going to
those
stay
are some wild
skeptical, but
callers.
what's up?
Thanks for inviting me on. It's been a real nostalgia trip. I was an atheist for about 20 years, and I'm 20 now, so the whole of my life.
Oh,
but
wait, so you
it's great to
just
have y'all
stopped being an atheist? Just like
Yeah.
recently? Okay.
Yeah, pretty recently. But I'm
Well,
not
what-
really going to talk about that.
Well, real quick,
because-
what changed your mind?
I didn't like a lot of the ideas. They seemed very facile that other atheists in forum boards and discussion questions and stuff were putting forwards. They seem not to have a real understanding of historically what religion has meant to people.
Well, yeah, religion means a lot to people, but did you decide that there's a God?
No, I didn't. I'm unsure on
then
the
you're-
question of the subject.
Wait, so you don't believe
mean,
in God
I'd
still?
like-
Well, they identified you as theist.
Well,
Yeah, I would qualify myself as a theist. Yeah, I mean,
Then
But
you
you don't
believe a
believe
God
in God.
exists.
debate. Let's not talk the classification thing, you
okay.
know?
Well,
You
but
know,
you
that
got to the
describes
top of the
people.
list.
That's a weird use of the word theist.
Yeah, I don't
though.
believe in God, but
I
I'm a
believe-
theist.
No, okay. I believe in God in the sense that I believe the vast majority of Christians and most religious people throughout the history. Like, I'm not a biblical literalist. Is the point.
Okay, but you believe there is some
Well, that
kind
would-
of intelligence
Yeah, that would
who
be not a
created the
fundamentalist.
universe.
Yes.
Why?
Okay, that's a
Okay,
God.
all right,
I'll
well,
buy
let's
that.
get to your question.
As a God.
Yeah, I was more interested, and again, thank you so much for having me on. In a lot of the subjects you brought up during the first 30 minutes, and I was just wondering, because I do still consider myself a skeptic. I know y'all might not want to take that seriously, and I totally sympathize with that. But
can be.
y'all brought up fake news, which is something, as a journalist, I work for my university student newspaper at the University of Washington. People have been talking about fake news more and more, and I've been wondering how seriously y'all take that, because if you look at the Google Trends for that, people have very recently, the topic of fake news has shot up really, really quickly, and I almost feel like it's sort of a defensive measure.
No, I think the commonness of fake news has shot up because the way that people get their information has changed a lot. And I say this as I mean,
yeah.
I'm not a journalism student, but I was a computer science student, and social media
Right.
has always been really interesting to me. And the thing is that people get their information in a much different way that has much less of a filter than it used to.
That's very true, and looking for different sources of information like this show is, of course.
Right, but I mean, on this show, we would never claim to, like, I don't think that people should take us as authorities on things that we talk about because we're not. But as a
in some
as a
ways, I
journalism
think y'all are
student,
great.
you probably recognize that there's a certain amount of investigation and fact checking that goes into a typical story. Hopefully, if you work out for an organization that cares about putting out accurate information, and there are a lot of organizations that seem to be becoming more prominent because they are profitable and because they appeal to people, but they actually don't care even a little bit about fact-checking their information, and I think that matters. And it's not that those types of people never existed before. It's just that because of the way that technology is structured now, it's more visible to people and it's more profitable. And so they can afford to get some big organization going easier than they used to. Right? What? Did we lose it?
No,
Is there a
come
problem
on.
with the phone lines?
Come on, seriously.
Yeah, it says ringing on that line. Shoot. So, Forrest, call back if you can, and call screeners. Try to keep some lines free for him in case he calls back. Darn it. Kevin?
Hey guys.
No, wait.
What do you mean, no
Why
wait?
didn't Kevin get to the front of the line?
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
There's Kevin.
Sorry, throw me back to the end
Okay.
of the line.
I already said that I don't want to spend the whole show talking about vegetarianism, and it looks like you are making an argument against vegetarianism, but that's also off topic. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Feel free to post to the blog if you want to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got,
Right.
there's a thread there if you want to go off.
freethoughtblogs.com/AXP. Off topic. Sorry, I have spoken. What's next? I don't know if I should just be going in order now. Okay,
I don't
Dan.
even know.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
What's on your mind?
Okay. So, yeah, I'm an atheist, and I've been an atheist for a few years now. And, I've been keeping up with the real atheology on Facebook and YouTube. Are you guys familiar with that?
I've heard of it. I can't remember which of the sources it is.
Justin Cheever.
Justin Cheever is great. Philosophy student. He also does that podcast, Reasonable Doubts.
Yeah.
Follow Justin Cheever. We follow each other, so.
All right. So, yeah, real atheology is, he's one of the people in charge of that. So, but anyway, okay, my question. So, I've been keeping up with, real atheology and what, atheist and quote unquote naturalist philosophers have to say today. And, I've noticed that, a lot of atheists and so-called naturalist philosophers today, they believe in immaterial stuff, and they believe in things that I wouldn't consider natural, and which makes me think of them as like, okay, you call yourself a naturalist, but I don't really think of you as a real naturalist. I don't see how a naturalist can believe in that sort of nonsense. But anyway, okay, so yeah, my question to you guys is like, do any of you believe in any immaterial, non-material spiritual stuff, or not?
I like to think I don't, but who knows? Maybe there's something back there that I haven't discovered yet. But I would say in general, I would tend to say no.
Right. I believe in things which are not themselves physical stuff, but expressed through a physical medium, like music. Bach's B minor Mass is a piece of music that is sort of conceptual, and you can play it on different instruments or record it on different objects. But so it's a pattern which can be expressed through physical objects, but I'm pretty sure that's not what you mean.
Yeah, no, because like sound is a completely physical phenomenon. I mean,
well,
like there's nothing ghosty about that.
Right, but you get into I don't know if we want to get off into this topic.
Okay.
But why do you ask?
Well, I ask because it seems to me that there are atheists who believe in material stuff.
Like what?
I've had okay. So one time I was at Real Atheology, and looking at the comment section, and seeing these so-called atheists saying that they believe like the laws of logic are immaterial, and they believe in abstract objects that transcend space-time, but don't really interact with space-time. Like they're not in a causal relationship with the physical universe. So that's why I asked.
I actually think that the Justin Cheever, at least from what I've heard on Reasonable Doubts, would not be so quick to call the laws of logic material as such. I think but I mean, are you criticizing what you heard on Real Atheology specifically, or what?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've heard it on Real Atheology, and I've heard it from theists, during that debate between Bill Honey and Matt Slick.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Slick talked about the laws of logic being immaterial, and that just sounds like nonsense to me. Like, it makes me think, like, are you being serious? Do you seriously believe that stuff? Do you seriously believe what you're saying? I mean,
I think you want to be careful when it comes to presuppositional apologetics, because a lot of atheists home in on, I know exactly what the problem is with it, and they're wrong. Like, it's, it's not that this stuff is necessarily well defined, but there is a robust body of philosophy that people have been writing as they grapple with this concept for hundreds of years. Like, what is logic and what is math itself?
Right.
And to try to boil it down to physical processes is, I think, trivializing it in a way. But I don't know that we can get all that deep, and I'm certainly not a philosopher myself. But I would tend to defer to what a lot of philosophers I know think. So, I mean, if you think that's obviously wrong, then I think it's possible you haven't thought hard enough about it.
no, I've thought hard enough about it, but I still think, like, that idea is completely insane. And
well, I can't believe you're going to make me sound like Cy 10 Bruggencate, but you can't have, like, a cup of logic, right? I mean, what does it mean to say that logic would be a physical thing?
Well, okay, so, when I think of logic, I think of the laws of logic, right?
Uh-huh.
These three laws of logic, these three statements.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And I have never ever experienced a non-physical statement. The kinds of statements.
You mean it's always applied to physical things, but that doesn't mean that the... I'm even putting myself to sleep right now. I'm sorry. I recommend that you check out like maybe the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy if you want to go deeper into this topic.
Yeah, all right. Well.
All right. Okay.
Well, I guess I'm done.
All right. Thanks for calling. I don't know, Tracie.
I'm not ignoring it. I just wanted to look something up.
Okay.
For my own
should I
sanity.
take another call or wait?
No, you can go ahead. I'm just going to look this up in the background.
I'm sorry. I might have kept that call a little longer if we weren't running out of time, but we've got 15 minutes left. And by the way, programming note, for a couple of months I've been doing a thing at the end where I do a lightning round where everybody who's left on the line is, I just try to take them in a minute or less. I've gotten feedback on that. I think slightly more negative than positive. It makes us be kind of douchey to the last remaining callers and puts them under pressure. And maybe it's not so fun to watch. If you think that we should bring back the lightning round, then feel free to email and let me know. But I think if you haven't called in already with 15 minutes to go, we're not going to get to you. But we are going to get to Dana in Florida. How are you?
Hi. I hate to call. I feel like I'm panicking. And
please don't panic.
I always admired my sister because she had such sound faith. I know what I know, and I wanted it too. And I attended theology. I went to the seminary. I studied. And I was in musical ministry, and she was so proud of me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I wanted, was to make her proud. And I started thinking, this is bullshit. I have a dog that I love, and I wouldn't demand that he fear me and love me, or I'm going to kick him for eternity. And I was an atheist towards the end of this while I was, saving souls. And I finally admitted that I was an atheist about 7 years ago, but I kept quiet. And I moved 800 miles away. Not because of that, but just, life happens. And my sister's at the end stage of her life, and so am I. We are both suffering from illnesses. And she got word through the grapevine and called me Monday night and said, are you an atheist? And I said, well, why do you ask? And she said, well, I've heard, and I want you to know you're going to hell, and I don't want to go to heaven without you, and you better get right with God. And I told her, I said, for 7 years I've kept quiet about this while I listened to you, talk about God and you know what you know and everything. And she kind of ripped me to shreds, and I just thought, I thought, who can I grab? And I went online and I found an atheist page, and I was telling them, and I let it slip. I was suicidal at that point. And there were about 20 people in there. I mean, they told me to call a suicide hotline, and I said, please, if anyone on a hotline tells me they're going to pray for me, I'm taking them out with me. And they talked to me and calmed me down. But 6 days have passed, and I'm not suicidal. I'm just so hurt. I don't know what to do with it.
Well, first of all, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who have been mistreated and abandoned by their families because of this topic. So know that there's a whole community of people that relate to what you're describing. I'm sorry for the additional challenges that you're facing on top of this. It just makes it even more egregious to me.
I was in a very weakened state when this happened. I just don't feel able to stand up and fight back.
Sure. One of my worst memories. One of my worst memories of fundamentalism is of an elderly woman who was dying of cancer, who pulled me aside to tell me how afraid she was that she wasn't right with God and how she feared that she would go to hell. She was very, very sweet woman, kind, one of the best people I've ever known in my life, terrified that she was going to die and go to hell. And this is what was bothering her in the last days of her life because religion had put that torture into her head. And I gave a talk one time where I mentioned how in religion, especially in these brands of Christianity that are hell believers, they have this idea that, oh, you love the person, like your sister, you say she called and she said, I love you and I want you to be in heaven with me, right? This is what she's saying. And then you say she turned and ripped you to shreds. And one of the things I've called out, and this is what happens when people are younger and often having problems with their parents when they end up outed, is that the parents will say, well, we love you and we don't want you to go to hell, we want you to go to heaven. And then they will proceed to tell the person that they can't tell their siblings what they think or what they believe, that they will not talk about it in that house, that they will continue to go to church, that they will, and they start treating the child like, they don't treat them like somebody that cares. And one of the analogies that I used, I said, suppose that your child came to you and said they had thoughts of suicide. Would you tell them? I don't want you to talk to this about anybody. I don't want you to tell anybody. I don't want anybody to know about this. And I care about you and I love you and I don't want you to die, but you keep your mouth shut about it. And we want you to pretend like you're fine and like you're not suicidal. That's how we're going to proceed. If they really cared, then they wouldn't act like they act. So this idea that I'm only treating you this way because I love you and I want you to come to heaven with me is not true. Because if you were in a state where it had nothing to do with the religion and you were in some way challenged or in danger, they would never say the response is for you to just keep your mouth shut or for you to just snap out of it, right? I mean, you would want to help the person, but it doesn't sound like she was trying to help you. It sounds like she was just trying to threaten and intimidate and scare and guilt you. Yeah.
Well, she always admired me so much because I, was a believer, and when I was writing to these other atheists on this, quick, Facebook kind of thing, I thought I should have lied. It's all my fault. I should have said, praise God, no, I'm not atheist. And one of the women that I hold in high regard, who told me to call, she said, what you're reacting to is the fact you were unfairly set up.
Yeah.
Because she knew when she called what your answer was going to be.
Yeah.
And you were sad. I mean, it came, what do you call it when you just hit upside the head?
You were blindsided. You were blindsided. Yeah.
Dana, you asked how you're going to fight back. And, I mean, my answer is...
I'm not going to fight back. I got nothing. No. I've got nothing. I mean...
You don't need to change...
Well, I mean, defend myself. I don't mean fight back.
Sorry, you did say defend yourself. But what I'm saying is you don't need to do that either. I mean, the reason you're hurting right now is... I mean, if a complete stranger said to you that you were going to hell, you might not care as much, but I think you're feeling very sad about the damage of the relationship with someone that you're close to.
I love her. She was always my idol, and I tried to follow in her footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
And I faked it. I faked it for years, and I thought, I'll eventually believe this crap.
Right.
And I never did. I couldn't, but I tried.
But
should we plug secular therapy?
Oh, yeah. Do you know it?
I don't know it offhand, but maybe they can find it and put it up on the screen. But there is a group, if you have access to a computer and to Google, there's a group called the Secular Therapy Project, and they can try to help get you in touch with a secular therapist, with somebody that could talk to you, because it sounds like you could use some real support. I think that the atheist community is a really, often those forums are very supportive. And
Secular Therapy is the Secular Therapist Project is from the Recovering from Religion Foundation, and you can find it at seculartherapy.org.
Yeah.
I went to something. It was recovering from.
Okay.
Yeah.
This
might be
woman suggested it, and it was pending, and I applied, and I guess I'm waiting. I don't know, but in the meantime.
Well,
I hate to bother you all, but
no, you're not bothering us. I mean, I just want to make sure.
I've got to get out of this emotional horror I'm in.
The blog too. I suggest as well, Dana, that you go to our blog. I would say go ahead and post a little bit about which caller you were, and I think you'll get a lot of support and feedback there as well.
Right. What blog are you talking?
You know the
Austin,
URL?
Texas?
Oh, freethoughtblogs.com/AXP. But I also want to make sure that before you go, you understand that you are not to blame for the way that your sister thinks of you.
Correct.
I mean, it's not your fault that she said those hurtful things to you, and it's not really your fault that you tried to stay in her good graces by hiding what you believed now. And the way your sister chose to react to what you told her, this very personal thing, those are her own issues. And I know it hurts to deal with somebody who you're very close to telling you off like this. But it's not up to you to argue with her and prove that you're worth speaking respectfully to. It's up to her to process her own issues and repair the relationship, and she may not. And you can help her and talk to her lovingly, and tell her how you're feeling. But you can't make another person treat you the way you want to be treated, and that's a real shame, because you deserve to be treated with compassion and respect.
Sure.
I asked her, I said, you worship someone who could send your sister to hell forever? Mm-hmm. And she said, well, you asked for it.
Yeah, you sent yourself, right? That's what they always want to say. It's that somehow you set this up all by yourself, and it wasn't like a system that they, I don't know. It's a mess. What religion does to people and gets mostly good people to do to other people, it's reprehensible in cases like this. And I'm sorry that you are being the victim of something like this.
Well, I appreciate that. I was trying to keep quiet about it.
I don't think you should keep quiet. I think you should reach out to as many forums and support groups as you can find until you find one that you feel really comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And definitely, like I say, there are a lot of people that are going to relate to this story. That if in the past, I've heard people say that it gives them a lot of comfort to find other people that share that experience and that can understand them. And I think you can find that in a lot of the atheist forums, because your experience is very common, unfortunately.
I found the understanding that kept me from doing something permanent. It was, I think, Atheist of Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I landed, and that's where I got the help.
Okay.
They kept me from doing something permanent. I just can't get rid of this vomiting, urge to vomit over.
I think it's going to take a while. I mean, so things impact us in different ways, and clearly this has traumatized you. I mean, you are traumatized, and it may be a lot to do with your situation, because you described that you're facing a lot of other challenges right now. Like you said, you feel like you're in a weakened state, and I understand that. A lot of times we can hold up to things pretty well, and then it becomes that last straw in a pile of stresses that becomes the thing that breaks us. So
I can handle 2 or 3 or 4 things, but suddenly I'm
carry
weak.
a lot of straws, and
then
there's the one. I understand, and so please do reach out to other people. Don't feel like you have to sit there by yourself and not express this and not get support. You can definitely get support. It's out there.
Yeah.
Secular. You think secular exists in Florida?
The Secular Therapy Project, yeah. In fact, their outreach try to hook you up with therapists that are in your area that can help you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I hope you have time to go to another call.
Well, I hope it gets better for you.
Yeah. I hope you'll be okay.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you for your call.
All right. Bye.
Goodbye.
And we are not doing a lightning round, so that's our show.
Oh. The rest of the people can post at the blog. Feel free to go to the blog if you'd like, or try your luck calling in again next week. Or
you never know what kind of show you're going to get on the Atheist Experience, but a lot of people have to go through some very difficult times as a result of their non-belief. And I think more than anything else, that's why we want to be here for people. So if you're in Austin, we'll see you at the Star of India in 15 minutes. And if you're not, See you next week. Bye.
Hi, this is Russell Glasser, host of The Atheist Experience. You know, The Atheist Experience is made possible by volunteers and the generous support of viewers like you. If the promotion of positive atheist culture and separation of church and state are values that you hold, please consider contributing by becoming an ACA member or visiting our product page at evolvefish.com under the Partner tab. Thank you.